Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive deep into some seriously mind-bending stuff.
Always up for a challenge.
Perfect, because you guys sent us in this article simply titled "The Block Universe Theory," and well, let's just say it's pretty wild.
Yeah, definitely thought-provoking.
So for this deep dive, we're gonna try to break it all down
Absolutely.
and hopefully extract some real insights from it.
Sounds good.
So to kick things off, what exactly does this theory propose? Like, what's the core idea here?
Well, in a nutshell, it suggests that instead of time flowing in a straight line, past, present, future, all moments in time actually exist simultaneously.
Okay, hold on a sec. All moments exist at the same time. So you're saying, like, right now, the past isn't gone, the future isn't unwritten, it's all happening at once.
That's the gist of it, yeah. It's like, imagine a loaf of bread.
A loaf of bread.
Yeah, where each slice represents a moment in time. That entire loaf, that's the block universe. And all those slices, all those moments, they exist at once.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the picture, but I got to admit, it's a lot to process. So if everything's already set in this block universe, how do we account for our experience? Like, why does yesterday feel gone? And why does tomorrow feel uncertain?
Right. That's the real head scratcher. And this is where things get really interesting. See, the theory proposes that our perception of time flowing moving forward, it's just that, a perception. It's the way our brains try to make sense of this massive static block of space-time.
So like our consciousness is kind of moving through this block universe, experiencing it one slice at a time.
Yeah.
And that creates this illusion of flow,
Exactly.
like a film strip maybe. Each individual frame is static, but play them together, and it creates the illusion of motion.
Perfect analogy. But then to make things even more wild, this theory gets tied into quantum mechanics, which governs the behavior of, particles at a subatomic level.
Right. The article mentioned that, and obviously that's where I started to lose the plot a little bit.
Yeah, it gets pretty complex.
Can you try to break down that connection for me? What does quantum mechanics have to do with all of this?
Well, quantum mechanics throws some truly bizarre concepts into the mix,
Okay.
like superposition and entanglement.
All right. Those are definitely words. What do they mean?
Superposition, in simple terms, is the idea that a particle can exist in multiple states at once, until it's observed, that is.
So it's like it's in all those states simultaneously until we look at it, and then it sort of chooses one.
In a way, yeah. And then entanglement suggests that particles can be linked across vast distances.
Okay.
And they can influence each other instantaneously, no matter how much space is between them.
Whoa. Okay. So we're talking faster than the speed of light kind of stuff, like spooky action at a distance.
That's the term Einstein used for it, yeah.
Okay. So these quantum phenomena are basically challenging our whole understanding of time, right? Because if a particle can be in multiple places at once, does that mean time itself might be more fluid than we think?
That's exactly what some physicists are suggesting, yeah. It throws another wrench into that traditional linear view of time.
Okay, my brain is officially doing backflips now. But before we go any further down that rabbit hole, I need to ask, if this block universe theory is as revolutionary as it sounds, is there anything from, mainstream physics that actually supports it? Or is it more of a cool thought experiment at this point?
Well, while we can't exactly step outside of space-time to directly test it, there are aspects of established physics that do lend support to the idea.
Like what?
Like Einstein's theory of relativity, for instance.
Ah, Einstein. Always got to bring him into it, don't we?
Well, his theories are pretty groundbreaking. They completely revolutionized our understanding of gravity, space, and time.
They did. They really did, even if they still make my head spin sometimes.
Yeah.
So how does relativity tie into the block universe theory?
Well, one of the key takeaways from relativity is that time isn't absolute. It's not a universal constant that ticks at the same rate for everyone everywhere. Instead, it's relative to the observer. Time is actually affected by gravity and velocity, a concept known as time dilation.
Okay, I'm vaguely remembering something from the article about clocks running slower in strong gravitational fields, like, say, near a black hole. So does that mean if I were hanging out near a black hole, I'd actually age slower than someone back on Earth?
Exactly. Time is flexible, it bends, it stretches, and the stronger the gravitational field, the more pronounced that effect becomes.
So it's not just a science fiction trope. Time really does get wonky near black holes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that tells us that time isn't this rigid, unchanging thing we often perceive it to be. It's more dynamic than that.
Wow. Okay. And how does this time dilation thing, how does it connect back to the block universe?
Well, relativity shows us that time is a dimension, interwoven with space to form this four-dimensional continuum we call space-time.
Right.
And this idea of space-time as a unified fabric, it aligns perfectly with the concept of all points in space-time coexisting within the block universe.
Including past, present, and future moments.
Exactly. All those moments exist within that fabric.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the connection. So black holes aren't just a cool sci-fi concept. They're actually out there warping space-time.
Yeah.
Messing with the flow of time as we experience it. That seems like pretty compelling evidence that our everyday understanding of time might be a bit, well, limited.
Definitely suggests there's a deeper, more complex reality beneath the surface where time might not be as straightforward as we tend to think.
A deeper reality. Okay, I like the sound of that. But it also leads to some pretty big questions, doesn't it? Like, what about free will?
Ah, yes, the age-old question.
If the block universe is real, and everything's already set, past, present, future, does that mean free will is just an illusion? Are we just along for the ride with no real choice in the matter?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's definitely one that the block universe theory seems to push us towards, leading us down a deterministic path, which can be kind of a scary thought for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the idea that everything's predetermined can be pretty unsettling. But is there any way to reconcile this idea with our, with our gut feeling that we do have choices?
There are definitely perspectives that try to do just that.
Okay, good, because I'm not ready to give up on free will just yet.
Yeah.
So what are some of those perspectives? What does the article say?
Well, one perspective is that our consciousness might be moving through a pre-existing path in the block universe.
Pre-existing path, so like the path is already laid out.
In a sense, yes. Think of it like a train moving along a track. The track already exists, the destination's set, but you still experience the journey, right?
Okay, I can kind of see that. So are you saying our choices matter in the sense that they shape how we experience the journey, even if the destination is predetermined?
Exactly. It's not about changing the ending, but about how we experience the story as we move through it.
That's an interesting way to think about it. So if every moment already exists in this block universe, why does the present moment feel so special? Why does it feel different?
Well, that's because even though all those moments may exist simultaneously, we can only experience them one at a time.
So it's like reading a book. The story's already written, but we only experience it page by page.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that page we're currently on, that's the present moment. It's where our consciousness intersects with the vastness of space-time. And that present moment, that's really all we have, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes me think about something you mentioned earlier about those quantum particles that exist in multiple states until they're observed.
Yeah.
So is our consciousness somehow collapsing the possibilities of the block universe into the specific reality we experience in the present moment?
It's a fascinating idea.
Is it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's one that some physicists are actually exploring, this idea that consciousness might play a more active role in shaping reality than we previously thought.
Okay, hold on. My brain is going to melt
Yeah.
if we go too far down that path today.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep rabbit hole.
But I do want to come back to this idea of determinism for a minute. Because if everything's already set in this block universe, does that mean our choices, our actions, don't actually matter?
Well, it's a natural question to ask, for sure. But it's important to remember that the block universe theory, it doesn't erase the significance of our choices. It just it reframes them a bit.
Reframes them how?
Instead of thinking of our choices as creating the future, we might think of them more as expressions of who we are, within this pre-existing structure.
So, like, it's not about changing the ending of the book. It's more about how we experience the story as we read it.
Exactly. Our choices, actions, experiences, they all contribute to the richness of the tapestry, even if the overall design is pre-existing. And our choices still have consequences. They shape our journey through the block universe, even if they don't alter its fundamental structure.
Honestly, when we first started talking about this, I got to admit, this whole concept was a little unsettling.
Yeah, it can be.
But the more we talk about it, I don't know, the more I'm seeing a different side of it. It's kind of freeing, actually, in a weird way.
Freeing how?
Like to let go of that pressure of always trying to create this perfect future and just focus on being present, making choices that align with my values.
I get what you mean. It is a shift in perspective. Instead of feeling burdened by the weight of an uncertain future, we can find a sense of liberation in knowing that it already exists, in a way, just like the past still exists.
Right. It's all part of this grand scheme.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to this idea you've mentioned a few times, the significance of the present moment. Can you elaborate on that a bit more? Like, why is the present moment so special if all moments are equally real in this block universe?
Well, because it's the only moment we can truly experience, right? It's where our consciousness intersects with reality. It's where we have the power to act, to choose, to experience, joy, love, connection, all the things that make life meaningful. Think of it like standing on the edge of a vast ocean. The entire ocean is there, stretching out before you, but you can only really dip your toes in the water where you're standing in the present moment.
That's a beautiful analogy. I'm starting to see how this block universe theory, even with all its mind-boggling implications, can actually lead us to a deeper appreciation for the present moment.
Absolutely. If we embrace the idea that all moments are equally real, then every present moment holds infinite value.
It does. It's an invitation to savor each experience, to appreciate the beauty of everything as it unfolds.
Even if the overall design is already set, so to speak.
Right. Okay, so the block universe theory isn't just this heady scientific concept. It's also a framework for living a more mindful, maybe even a more fulfilling life.
Precisely. It encourages us to shift our focus from worrying about what might happen to appreciating what is happening.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of what might happen, let's talk about change. How do we account for change in this block universe? If it's a static structure, how do things grow and decay and transform?
It does seem like a paradox.
It does.
But remember, even though all those moments might exist at once, we experience them sequentially. That movement through the block, the unfolding of moments, that's what creates the perception of change.
So it's not that things are literally changing from one moment to the next. It's more like the different moments contain different states of being. Kind of like how a movie, even though it's a series of still frames, it creates the illusion of movement when those frames are played in sequence.
That's a great way to put it. The change is woven into the fabric of the block universe itself. Each slice of that cosmic loaf is different, and as we move through those slices, we perceive those differences as change.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm getting that now. So change isn't an illusion, it's just baked into the structure of the block universe. It's part of the grand design.
Exactly. And when you think about it that way, it can be pretty liberating.
How so?
Because it allows us to embrace the flow of life, to appreciate the beauty of change without getting all caught up in the anxiety of an uncertain future. You can relax into the knowing that it's all part of this incredible tapestry.
That makes a lot of sense. It does make me wonder about the ethical implications of this whole thing, though.
Ethical implications.
Yeah, like if everything is set in this block universe, does that diminish our sense of responsibility for our actions? I mean, if the future's already out there, does it really matter what we do in the present?
That's a really interesting question, and to be honest, it's one that ethicists are still debating. There are definitely different ways to interpret the theory and its implications for morality and responsibility.
Well, I could see how it could go either way. Like, on the one hand, if everything's predetermined, you could argue that we're not truly responsible for our actions.
Right. We're just playing out a script that's already written.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, knowing that our choices are part of this eternal structure, maybe that actually increases our sense of responsibility.
That's another way to look at it, yeah.
But how? I'm not quite seeing that side of it yet.
Because every action, every decision we make, it becomes a contribution to the overall tapestry of the universe,
So it's like knowing that your brushstrokes are part of this grand masterpiece.
Exactly. And that awareness might inspire us to act with more intention, more care, knowing that our choices have these lasting consequences. They ripple through the universe.
Ah, okay, I'm seeing what you mean. It's like, even if we're not creating the future from scratch, we're still shaping it, adding our own unique colors and textures to the overall picture.
Exactly. And those colors and textures, they matter, even if the big picture is already complete.
That's actually pretty empowering when you think about it that way.
It is.
It gives us a sense of agency, even within the framework of this pre-existing structure.
Which is kind of the paradox of it all, right?
It is.
By accepting the fixed nature of time, we might actually find a deeper sense of freedom and responsibility in the present moment.
So the block universe theory, even though it might seem limiting at first, actually has the potential to make our choices even more meaningful, to give them more weight, more significance.
That's the beauty of it. It's a shift in perspective that allows us to let go of that anxiety of trying to control the future and really focus on making the most of the moment we're in.
To just be.
Exactly.
I love that. And it also reminds me of what the Stoic philosophers used to say, that we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it.
Absolutely. The block universe theory, in a way, it echoes that ancient wisdom.
It really does. I'm starting to see how this theory, despite its initial mind-bending strangeness, can actually be really empowering. Like, instead of feeling trapped by fate, we can choose to see ourselves as co-creators of our experience. We may not be able to change the whole script, but we can definitely choose how we play our role.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it's a perspective that resonates with a lot of spiritual traditions, the emphasis on inner peace, acceptance, finding joy in the midst of challenges.
It is. It's fascinating how this scientific theory can lead us to such profound philosophical and even spiritual insights.
It is. It reminds us that science and philosophy aren't separate disciplines. They're just interconnected ways of exploring the universe and our place in it.
And those explorations can lead to some pretty amazing discoveries, challenging our assumptions and expanding our sense of what's possible. This deep dive into the block universe theory has certainly done that for me.
It's a journey, that's for sure. One that asks us to stretch our minds, to embrace paradox, and to find the beauty in how it's all connected.
And speaking of interconnectedness, there's one more aspect of the block universe theory I'd like to explore before we wrap things up today. It's this idea that the theory, even with all its seemingly deterministic implications, can actually offer us a new way of thinking about freedom.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like we're talking in circles a little bit, doesn't it? Finding freedom in a framework where everything's already set.
Right. It definitely goes against, our usual ideas about what freedom means. We usually think of it as having tons of choices.
Unlimited possibilities.
Exactly. Being able to shape the future however we want. But this block universe theory, it suggests a totally different kind of freedom, right?
It does. It asks us to shift our focus. Instead of trying to control the future, we embrace the present moment. If we accept that the future already exists, well, at least in some sense, then all that pressure to create it, to force it to be a certain way, it just disappears.
So it's like saying, okay, the future is what it is. I can't change it, so why stress about it?
Exactly. You let go of that need to control everything, embrace the reality of what is. And in that surrender, that acceptance, you find a new kind of freedom.
So what does this new freedom look like? How do we experience it?
It's the freedom to be present, right here, right now, without carrying the weight of expectations or regrets. It's the freedom to choose how we respond to whatever's happening in our lives, even if we see those circumstances as already set within this block universe idea.
So it's not about having control over what happens externally, but more about having control over our internal experience, choosing how we react to things, how we make sense of them, how we choose to feel.
Exactly. It's that freedom to choose our attitude, our perspective, our emotional response, no matter what life throws our way. And that's a freedom that nothing can take away from you.
Like the Stoics said, we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond.
Exactly. The block universe theory really reinforces that ancient wisdom, doesn't it?
I think it does. I'm starting to see how this theory, even though it's mind-blowing at first, can actually be incredibly empowering. It's like, instead of feeling trapped by fate, we can choose to be active participants in our own experience.
Co-creators, maybe.
Yeah, co-creators. We might not be able to change the whole script, but we can choose how we play our role.
That's a great way to think about it. And it aligns with a lot of spiritual traditions, too. The importance of inner peace, of acceptance, of finding joy, even in the midst of difficult times.
It does. It's amazing how this scientific theory can lead us to such profound philosophical, even spiritual insights.
It's a good reminder that science and philosophy aren't really separate things. They're both ways of trying to understand the universe and our place within it.
And these explorations, they can take us to some unexpected places, right? Challenge our assumptions, expand our understanding of what's possible. This deep dive into the block universe theory has definitely done that for me.
Me too. It's a journey that asks us to stretch our minds, to be open to paradox, and to find the beauty in how everything's connected.
It has been an incredible journey exploring this theory with you. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on time, on freedom, even on the meaning of life itself.
It's been a pleasure discussing these ideas with you. And to our listener, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the block universe theory. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did. We encourage you to keep exploring this topic, see what other insights you uncover. After all, the universe is full of mysteries. There's always something new to learn.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep those minds open. Keep asking those big questions.